I want to just go back to 2008 for a moment and just even start with a very big picture sense of it all. What do you think happened that led to 2008?
Well, I think the main thing, but there's all kinds of tributaries feeding into the big Missouri River on this, but you had people think that housing could do nothing but go up, and you had a $20 trillion market in residential housing. So it was a big asset class, and people started using it as a currency, basically, and they found out that it wasn't straight up, in the end, and they borrowed on them, and there were levels of participation up and down the line. I mean, people at the top were writing mortgages that they knew they'd never have to hold, so they'd sell them to somebody in Norway after they'd been put in a package. And you had people refinancing, figuring that it didn't make any difference whether the monthly payments were too high, and you had them lying on loans, and you had the lenders participating in it. And you basically just had a huge speculation in housing, and 50 million of the 75 million owner-occupied homes in the United States were mortgaged. 25 million were free and clear, so they were okay. But you literally had a crash in the value of something that 50 million families owned on margin, had thought were going to go up. They'd based their living standards on it. In many cases, they'd borrowed against it. And it was unlike any widespread financial participation anybody had ever seen. So it manifested itself in all kinds of ways. I mean, everybody behaved badly, but they believed, and when people start believing something kind of crazy, you get that sort of thing.
It's early 2008, so the subprime mortgage is sort of gathering steam. The stuff over the summer of 2007 had already happened with BNP Paribas, if you remember.
Yeah.
Hedge funds with a lot of subprime mortgages are going under. There were a couple. You had New Century Financial go down, and Countrywide declare bankruptcy or get sold. At that point, how worried were you? Do you remember being worried?
Well, I wasn't worried because I've always assumed that in a lifetime of participating in the American economy, it's going to move forward dramatically over time, and also it's going to have a lot of hiccups. And it's part of our economic system that we will periodically have some craziness go on, and so I don't try to predict markets, or I don't try to predict business. I just try to adapt to what comes along. I did see in the summer of 2008, I got a call from one of the top officials of one of the main Wall Street firms trying to sell us many billions of dollars worth of equity securities in Freddie Mac, and I knew something was wrong. I mean, normally there's a market for Freddie 100 different places in the world, but when they call us, they've run out of steam, and then the roof fell in. I mean, on September 1st, there were 35 million money market accounts, and everybody felt they were 100% good, and within a couple of weeks, you had the conservatorship of Freddie and Fannie, and now you had 35 million people, and particularly when Lehman fell, that were worried about. Well, there were $3.5 trillion in money market funds. A couple trillion were in other than government money market funds. Now, if you've got people worried about $2 trillion in this country, you've got a panic like you've never seen.
And that's what we had. So take us back. I don't know if you remember this. This is after Bear Stearns goes down. So this is before Fannie and Freddie.
Yeah.
But after Bear Stearns, you get a call from Dick Fold.
Right.
And he tells you that his stock is getting killed by short sellers.
Yeah.
And there's
When anybody says that to me, I get very suspicious. I'd love to have short sellers in Berkshire. How does a short seller hurt you?
and he says there's an opportunity for you to invest
Right.
somewhere between $3 to $5 billion. Are you interested?
I'm interested in hearing him out. Yeah.
And what did you tell him?
I told him, tell me what your ideas are, and I'll do some looking at it. But tell me what you'll pay first, and then I'll know whether I want to do some looking. And so he threw out some tentative ideas. I do remember, and actually, he said, "Can I have Hank Paulson call you?" And so Hank called about, I think it was 6 or 7 on a Friday night, and then he stopped short of giving a totally unqualified endorsement, but he was probably hoping I was going to finance it, but he wasn't going to try and sell me too hard. I'm sure he didn't feel that was right. So anyway, I spent that evening going through there, probably a 10K. I've got it at the office still where I made notes as I went through it, and it was 250 or 300 pages, and I just wrote down on the front page the number of the pages where I was finding problems, and when I go through, I knew that it was not for us.
Because you saw what?
I just saw a lot of things that made me very worried about their financial condition and what would be happening to them under the circumstances that were happening in Wall Street.
And do you remember calling him back?
He either called me or I called him.
And what do you tell somebody like that when you're worried about their finances?
Well, I just tell them I'm not interested. I mean, I try to be as polite as possible. I'm not going to. I don't tell them. I don't start enumerating problems to them or anything.
And what did you think of him, by the way?
Well, I didn't know him that well. I'd probably only met him once at a dinner at the Treasury in Washington. I remember sat next to him. The reason I remember it was I accidentally spilled some wine on him. So, I didn't have any strong opinion about it at all. It was clear, though, that in the kind of market that was developing, they were going to need to get some money from somebody, and of course they got money afterwards.
Fast forward, if you could, now to, we talked about Fannie and Freddie over that summer, but now we're in September of 2008. And this is Friday, September 12th. This is the weekend.
The weekend.
The weekend. And you get a call this time, not from Lehman Brothers, but from AIG, asking if you'd be interested in investing $10 billion in the company.
Yep.
And Christopher Flowers is on the phone.
Well, I don't remember. I don't remember. I mean, Chris at some point was on the phone. I also remember the CEO of AIG being on the phone.
Yes, Bob Wilmstad also spoke.
Yeah,
to him.
yeah.
And what did you think?
Well, I asked them to send me out. I was thinking about the domestic PC operation, perhaps the whole PC operation. So I asked them if they would.
Can I ask you to say what PC
about
is?
Property casualty operation and insurance. And I asked them if they would facsimile out some bunch of information. I go down to the office that night, which I did, and what came through was not really useful. So I called back. I remember it's kind of hard to find them even in the building they were in, but I said that don't count on us. I know time is of the essence with you guys, so just don't waste it on me. So I'm out at that point. Now they re-enter the picture a little later, but I said I can't figure this thing out. It would have been $20-some billion, and we could have paid it if I'd known what we were getting. But I wouldn't be able to know. I wouldn't know what intercompany guarantees there were or anything else, and I don't think they knew. Whether maybe the property casualty companies hadn't guaranteed some things that Financial Products was doing or whatever it might be. So anyway, I signed off on it, and it became a very interesting weekend from that point forward.